sign is spoken language. Sign is language.
Sign is the language, and gesture is not a language. I mean, this stuff that we do spontaneously doesn't have the same linguistic principles. It doesn't have the same linguistic structure as.
It doesn't have the same properties.
But it works along with language to convey our ideas. It's part of the communicative act.
Right.
So it's a really important part of language, and it's really important to psychologists, because psychologists sort of use it as a window into the mind.
When we talk about gesture, we're really talking about the contrast between what's codified in the linguistic system, and that would be sign language or speech, and what is sort of, as you said, Susan, this window into the mind, which is more unconscious as we use our hands, use our bodies to convey meanings that we're not so we don't have so much control over. We're not aware of the meanings that they're conveying. I'm Diane Brentari. My work has been focused primarily on sign languages of the world, how they're similar to one another and how they differ amongst each other, and the issues that might come up as a result of different modalities of language communication, of communicating language. So the oral auditory modality for spoken language versus the visual gestural modality for sign, and how that might help us understand our language capacity better.
So I'm Anastasia Giannakidou. I study semantics, syntax, and pragmatics, so the relationship between meaning and form in natural language. I am interested in particular in questions of variation, cross-linguistic variation or variation in the expression of meaning. And I am recently, very engaged in this research on sign language, and I think the study of sign has a lot to tell us about language itself.
I'm Susan Goldin-Meadow. I study gesture, the spontaneous gestures that we produce when we talk, and I also study home sign systems, which are sign language systems that deaf people create. Anastasia and I have been collaborating for now a number of years because I'm looking at a home sign system that's being developed by deaf children, and I'm a psychologist. I'm not a linguist. I don't really know how to analyze data linguistically in a way that is sophisticated, and so I need the help of my colleagues and of Anastasia's skills in looking at semantics. So that is sort of a match made in heaven.
Yes, it was great.
We're good at language, and we're good at gesture, but we're not good at sign language.
At sign language.
We don't have the skills to do sign language, so we worked really hard to bring Diane Brentari to this university, and now we have the skills in sign language, and we're a great team. One of the big questions that our center is interested in is how languages emerge. And that's really difficult, as we've been saying, to explore in the spoken language world. But it's not so hard to explore in the sign language world because languages do grow up. And we have individuals who can create something that looks a bit like a linguistic system. And we can then watch that linguistic system change to become more and more language-like. And it's those stages that I think are really fascinating to all of us, because you can actually look at some factors that matter.
And so we need to be able to develop a theory to trace the trajectory, from the gestural system to the home sign system, the intermediate system, and then the sign. And we need to be able, to have a kind of well spelled out theory of how this happens.
And it gives us a chance to do it, with humans, with tasks, with experimental design that
and
we don't have for spoken languages.
Right. With spoken languages, we simply can't trace them back in time the way we can with sign languages, because they are new and young.
We have found and have been studying two such systems, one in Nicaragua that Susan and I have been involved in a little bit, and one in Israel, but there are some in Africa, and there are some in
they're all over the world.
They're all over the world, where you have isolated individuals who come together and start to use their hands as a way of their primary communication. That's where you're going to get a language spontaneously combust.
Language, sign language, when it's clearly codified, clearly linguistic, compared to gesture, where it's uncodified but manual, but representational nonetheless.
Right.
The other part of that continuum is action. Where I'm actually acting on something and making something happen. I twist open a jar and the jar opens. I gesture about twisting open a jar and the jar does not open.
Right.
So one of our studies is to try to explore this continuum a bit more.
Right.
And our goal is to use golfers, because we know one of our other colleagues, Sion Baidock, knows a lot about golf swings. She knows how experts swing and what the motor signature of an expert golfer versus a novice golfer. So we're going to bring golfers in and ask them to just ask them to swing, so we know what they do physically, but then ask them to talk about their golf swing. And so and when you talk about your golf swing, you will inevitably gesture, because I think you cannot talk about swinging your golf club without gesturing.
Right.
So we'll have gesturing, representational action compared to real action. And we can begin to distinguish between what gesture looks like, how much it pulls from real action, how much it sort of really gets its information from action, and how much it differs from action.
From action.
We were thrilled to be one of the recipients of a New Barra Collegium funding. And it has helped us in a number of ways. One is, of course, to get these projects off the ground and to really have the funding that allow us to do it. Another is to establish workshops throughout the university that sort of can bring people in to engage them in these ideas. And then the third is to get students who are interested in these questions. And I think in the end what we'd like to do is to apply for funding that can train students, because training students in these areas is really key to creating this area and making it live beyond the three of us.
Our goal was not to sort of take the science that would have gone on anyway to the next step, but to bring that science to Chicago.
Right.
And so the Collegium money gave us the way to kind of pull in people from English, from comp lit, and from music and visual arts to try to get the localizing process underway. Because like you said, how are we going to train students unless we have a critical mass of courses and faculty who are interested and engaged, who can supervise a lot of different kinds of work. So
we had our colleagues from music and colleagues from, linguistics,
Slavic languages.
Slavic languages, psychology, Howard Nussbaum presented.
Right.
So, we saw one particular question that was addressed from these different angles and perspectives, and that's exactly the type of research and engagement we want to see with our colleagues.